welcome to My Baking Journey, a podcast for bakers where you get to hear from some of the great minds in the baking industry. My name is Haf.
And my name is Rachel. I'm a baker. I know what it's like to be baking all day alone in my kitchen, experiencing the frustrations and struggles with no one else to guide or support me through it.
And I'm not a baker, but I've witnessed all the ups and downs that come with this industry and where it's hard to get a little bit of extra help.
So if you're looking for advice, tips, and amazing insight from various experienced bakers, you've come to the right place.
So let's give you a little insight into what's in store for you this week.
I wake up probably around 5:45 every day. I catch the train to get to work. I spend my train rides editing all of my content. On my breaks at work, I'm literally on Instagram posting those reels that I spent my train ride editing. Doing all of this as one person has been a lot. Sometimes I physically have to go into my planner and schedule in a date where I'm not doing anything.
This week, we're off to Canada to sit down with Lindsay, also known as the Flower Girl. Lindsay is truly a high performer. She has 3 educational degrees. She still maintains a full-time job. She's built her own brand and manufactures her own line of baking tools. And this in turn has allowed her to build a huge following on social media. She has an academy where you can learn how to bake with her in live classes or through her recorded sessions online. And on top of all that, she runs her e-commerce store with her partner. Are you exhausted yet? I mean, even for me as a small business owner, I am inspired by Lindsay's story because her attitude and drive to succeed is infectious. It just goes to show you what we're all capable of with some planning, some motivation, and of course, some big dreams. So here we go with Lindsay's baking journey. Enjoy.
Yeah, so we always just baked very casually. If it was someone's birthday, like a family member, we would just go to the store, make cake out of a box, ice it with whatever store-bought icing, and throw some sprinkles on it. That was the extent of our baking. And then if it was Christmas time, we would go on and bake homemade cookies, but that was really it. And then after I took this baking class, it was fun, but I didn't think anything of it. It was just something to learn. And then, it wasn't until I got into my master's degree that I was so stressed out, and I don't know what it was. I just turned to baking to kind of calm down my stress levels. And that's what I would plan out every weekend. So after a whole week of doing research in the lab, I would come home and then on the weekends just have something new planned to bake every week.
Did you have an audience for this bakes? I mean, did you have people who you could bounce this off, family, friends, or at university in your classes? Who were the lucky recipients?
I feel like I ate most of it. I was even too afraid to share that I was baking with the people that I was working with during my master's degree, because I heard of other stories where students were being penalized for having second jobs to try to compensate for such small payment that we would get as a grad student. And I was too afraid to even say anything about that at the lab. So I just kept quiet. I just baked for my family. And I think we just ended up eating most of it. I didn't have any audience. This was before I started the social media. So no one really knew about it except for the people closest to me.
It's amazing because I feel like we hear from a few people that, that we've spoken to on this podcast that baking is an outlet. But in many cases, it's been an outlet for them that hasn't necessarily saved them so much from something else that's quite so stressful. I mean, you going through your grad school degrees, and you haven't just done one, you've done more than one, correct? So you like piling on the stress, it sounds like. But baking is such a good release.
Yeah.
But there has to be a point, go take us back to those first years. 2017 is when you started, right?
Yeah.
So where was the mental shift? I'm spending all this time studying to build a career, but hey, wait a second, I quite like this baking stuff.
Yeah, so I started the baking for the stress relief, I would say in late 2016. And then by early 2017, I was like, you know what? I'm posting all of these cakes and stuff on my personal social media page. I'm sure people are sick of seeing it every day. And then I decided, like, I'm going to make a dedicated Instagram account to post all of my desserts. And I had no idea there was a baking community on Instagram. I thought I was like such a weirdo for making a page all about cakes. And then it turns out there were lots of people out there that were also had baking dedicated accounts. So I was like, well, I'm not the only one. And then I learned a lot from like following other bakers and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think it took me a month or two, and then I started getting people actually asking me to order things, and I was not anticipating that at all. That's basically where it shifted from like for fun, like hobby, to an actual business. So it was definitely unexpected.
So, Lindsay, like, how did you train yourself up? Was that all self-taught, or was there some really good baking books that you were looking at, YouTube videos, or did you go on any courses to skill yourself up? Because it's hard, right?
Yeah, it is hard. So back in 2015, we just took that one very basic cake decorating class. It was me, my mom, and my best friend Melody, and it was just for fun. It was super simple, and that's really all I had to go off of when I started. So I also had very minimal equipment to use. I think I only had two 8-inch cake pans and a hand mixer. So I really had nothing. I was making all the cakes were the same size. And I guess just from being on Instagram, I discovered the baking community and I saw that cakes could be more than what you would get in like the grocery store. And I feel like this whole like new world opened up to me and I was like, wow, I can really make cakes like so much more than what you see in the store. And I think that just like sparked something in me that I could like take this further. And I just had something in me that I just wanted to keep learning like more and more new designs and new techniques. So I basically just learned through, I think back at that time, Instagram was very photo focused. So everyone was just posting photos. There wasn't a whole lot of videos to go off of. I would just study people's photos and like come up with ways in my head on how I think they went about it. I'm also very much not a person who likes to ask for help. So I would feel like I'm like bothering someone if I like would send them a DM to ask for help on how do you do this or that. So I would kind of just experiment on my own. Maybe that's like the science person in me and then see how things were done. And I think that's just how I learned most things was just trial and error.
Well, I have to credit you because when I first started going on this journey myself, you were a massive inspiration to me. Actually, I remember I had a lovely friend at the time, and she said, you have to follow this baker. She's based in Toronto. And I remember looking on Instagram. It was a very new world for me, but a very exciting world as well. And I remember going, oh my goodness. Again, just reiterating what you were saying, the types of cakes that were out there and what you were creating and from a content perspective and a visual perspective was very, very exciting. You must have been one of those early exploders on Instagram that just have inspired a whole community of bakers and also perhaps armchair bakers, right?
Yeah.
Did you feel like you were getting this momentum to say people were now saying to you, are you selling this? Like, what was your transition there? Because you still have this other life as a student, right? You're building on a career in radiation therapy. So it's not like this is the only thing you're focused on. Half or more of your day is spent doing something else.
Yeah.
But this is building and building. So I'm just really interested to know how you're managing that.
Yeah, so I think when I finally finished my master's, there was a bit of time, there was about a year where I was kind of figuring out, like, what do I want to do next? So I wasn't in school for that year, but I was kind of figuring out, like, I still wanted to pursue a career in healthcare. So I was like applying for programs that I thought like interested me in like more of the healthcare field rather than in the research. The research just after that experience, it was just not the best experience, and it was just something I didn't want to do anymore. So I spent that year figuring out what I wanted to do. I think at the time I was also volunteering at a local hospital in their chemotherapy clinic. And at the same time, I was like, well, I got to make money if I'm just going to be at home kind of figuring out what I'm doing. So at that point, I was getting so many cake orders. I couldn't keep up with the cake orders. And then finally, I got accepted into my radiation therapy program. And around the same time, my Instagram page really started to grow. So my fiance, he was my boyfriend at the time, proposed the idea to me to start an e-commerce shop. And so around the time that I got accepted into this radiation program, I was working on this e-commerce shop. We finally launched it in late 2019.
This is Shop the Flower Girl, right?
Shop the Flower Girl, yeah. Right. And then at that point, I was now juggling cake orders plus the e-commerce shop plus running my social media account and trying to market like all of my new products on my new shop, and then also starting a brand new academic program. So it was a lot all at once.
Tell us a bit more about this e-commerce shop, because I think this is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Obviously we as OLBAA are an e-commerce brand. So yes, while we're intimately familiar with the ins and outs of e-commerce, I think there's a lot of bakers out there who just may not have an idea. And I think you can enlighten some of us on what you mean by an e-commerce shop. Is it your own products, how you develop them, where you got them, what works, what caused all this to come about? Give us some insight.
So my fiance was working for a certain tech company previously, and one of his boss's fiance also had her own e-commerce shop. And so at work, they would talk about like her e-commerce shop, and I don't know, my fiance got this idea in his head, like, oh, like we should try doing this too. And so he would ask his boss like more questions about it and try to learn more about it. And then he went on his own and just kind of figured out how to go about starting something like this. And then he managed to figure out how to get things manufactured and like where to warehouse them. And then I was the one who was like, well, these are the products I would like to sell. And we came up with a few different products that we got branded for ourselves. So when you get the product, they actually say like the Flower Girl on them. So they were like more customized for our shop.
What kind of products are these, by the way?
The one that I was most excited about was the cake turntable. So we launched like a metal cake turntable. It's very like durable, sturdy, and we launched it in 3 different colors that aligned with our branding, which I think very much also aligned with you guys' branding with the pink and the teal, the black.
Yeah.
Lindsay, was this because there was a lack of choice in Canada for these kind of products? Were you struggling? Is that where the idea came from, that you couldn't find these products in the kind of colours and designs and easy to use and durability? And so is that why you also saw a gap in the market, perhaps in the Canadian market and the global market now, that these designs could fill, right?
Yeah. The cake turntables that I had ever owned before we got ours made were all plastic. They were terrible, but that's all I could find at like my local shops or things like that. So I was like, well, why do turntables always have to be like either cheaply made, they don't spin properly, and then other like metal turntables out there, they didn't come in like cute colors. And I just felt this is something that I would love to have, and I'm sure like other people would enjoy it as well. And it's completely functional as well. It spins so smoothly. So I wanted products that looked cute, but also were like very functional, whether you're like a new baker or very experienced. So that was my goal.
And how has that journey been so far? I mean, like to start an e-commerce brand and then to market it and then also to sell it as well. So
yeah,
that's a massive journey in itself.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's been some ups and downs. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's a few things that come into play. I feel like we're only a 2-person team. So my business partner, who's my fiance, he does all of like the behind the scenes stuff. He manages like our website. He is in contact with the manufacturers and like warehousing and that kind of thing. And he also deals with like a lot of the customer service. Whereas I'm on the other end of it that people actually see, like I'm the face behind the brand. I'm the one who's using these items in my videos and my photos. And I have to like market these items as well. So I feel like when we started the shop, I also had to start a separate Instagram account. So now I'm managing 2 accounts at the same time, trying to not only make baked goods with the items that we are selling, but also coming up with like marketing materials and like posts to post on our other Instagram. And like sometimes we put out emails when we are launching new products, and just like doing all of this as one person has been a lot. Especially like as my page grows, it's like our customer base also grows and constantly trying to like meet this demand. And then I feel like another issue that we also kind of ran into was sales have been a little bit unsteady through the pandemic. So I feel like when the pandemic started, everyone was baking. Sales were like very steady. And then I feel like recently with the change in the Instagram algorithm, we've been having a really hard time like reaching our customers. And even now I'm offering like online live stream classes. I'll get messages from people saying like, oh, I never saw the class before it happened. And it's just a problem with Instagram, but it's like trying to make sure everyone who intends to see my message sees it has been really difficult. So it's been a roller coaster for sure.
I think what's interesting about this too is that, your Instagram is not small. You have 357,000 right now as at the time of this recording, but you still have the same challenges that someone who has 250 followers would have.
Yeah.
Getting to be noticed, getting to be seen and showing up on people's feed. Mm-hmm. It's a challenge, right? And it just forces you to have to think of different ways to market yourself, and you have to jump with the way Instagram's pushing things, right? So like Reels are big. So Did you make that switch to Reels and start doing a lot more video content and things like that?
Yes, definitely. So when Reels first came out, I took advantage of the fact that Instagram was offering this new feature. And I thought this is a really good way for me to show like behind the scenes of everything that I make. Because before that, I was kind of just posting photos, and like I was used to just posting a photo and thousands of people would see the post. And now when you post a photo, it's not the case. So switching to Reels was a bit of a jump, but I was already making some video content. So I wasn't like completely thrown off by like, oh, now I have to learn how to make videos. I was just kind of like dipping into videos here and there. But now that Reels are basically all that you can post, or else no one's going to see what you're doing, that's been very difficult, especially when I'm running my shop account at the same time. Like, I don't think I would have time to make Reels for my account and then separate content for that account as well, unless I somehow made this more of like a full-time thing. But now that I'm working as a radiation therapist, I just can't keep up.
It's a difficult juggle. There's so many hours that go behind the scenes into, not only there's the whole baking side, there's the decorating side, but then there's the whole filming and editing and the right sounds that you can choose and the right text that you might use or fonts or also it's a lot of work. And I'm just trying to imagine your week right now. So I'm guessing you're working full time. Was that 5 days a week somehow? And then the other 2 days and the evenings or whatever your shifts land out, that you're spending a lot of time on all the rest of the business, right?
Yeah. So on average, I wake up probably around 5:45 every day. I catch the train to get to work. I spend my train rides editing all of my content that I've made over the weekend. And then When I get to work, I do my job. And then on my breaks at work, I'm literally on Instagram posting those reels that I spent my train ride editing. And then I get home. There's always something I got to do when I get home. I have to use a planner to write out all my to-do because it's just so much and I can't keep track of all of it in my head. So every day when I get home, there's something to do, and it's usually something that involves my business in some way. So my days are pretty jam-packed now that I'm working full-time.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask. You know you're about to go bake a cake, right? A really nice tall cake with some beautiful decorations on top, maybe some dried blooms, lovely toppers. What are you going to box that in when you give it to the customer? Please don't tell me you're going to have to put some extenders on and staple it to a standard box and then wrap the thing in plastic and give that to somebody, hoping for the best. I have a better idea. Why don't you look at OLBAA tall cake boxes? 14 or 20 inches tall, they're gorgeous and strong. You can put them together in just a minute. Just amazing. You'll find them a game changer as a baker. Check them out, www.olbaa.shop. All right, let's get back to the show. What I find interesting, though, is you take a lot of time in your stories to update people on a bit of your personal life or just other things, background things that are happening. Let's just take an example. It's not a great one, but, you seem to be hit with a fair chunk of negativity through social media.
Yep.
And while you could just ignore it and carry on, which is what a lot of people do try to do because they do want to separate that emotional attachment to this.
Yeah.
You stop to point things out or remind people to, hey, just be nice, or it seems like that's important to you to spend the time to do that. But it's an uphill battle. Most people are going to tell you you'll never win this battle. So,
for sure.
I'm curious why you do it.
I agree. I will never win this battle. There's always going to be someone out there who hates something that I do, whether it's maybe they hate the color of the cake I made, or maybe I'm constantly getting random comments about why are your cakes so thick, but in a negative way. Maybe in other countries, that's not something that they do. So they almost criticize me, why would you make it that thick? Anyways, but I feel like I like to take a moment to talk about certain things just because I feel like if there's one person out there who's verbalized it, there's a lot of other people out there who haven't verbalized it, but they're thinking the same thing. Or maybe it's someone genuinely doesn't understand and I can take a moment to explain why something is how it is or why I did something a certain way. So I feel like people can learn something from it, even if they're not intending to be negative. There are some people out there that are just negative, but I feel like some people are just genuinely curious about how things work. Maybe they haven't actually written a comment or sent me a message about it, but I feel like always going through things can help clarify certain issues. Even with just my customers, with my cake orders, sometimes I experience maybe the customer tries to order a cake for tomorrow morning and it's already the evening and there's absolutely no way I'd be able to make it. I feel like if I create a story about something like that, then it would help to let my customers know, here's how I go about taking my orders, and I'm not able to take really last minute requests or something like that, if that makes sense. So that's why I usually take a moment to kind of explain things. I feel like it could always help someone out there.
I think it's super helpful. There was just a post the other day that you're talking about pricing. And I think this is such a hot topic and something that we know that bakers everywhere struggle. I struggled with it. I struggled to know what's the right price to put in.
Yeah.
And I think the more we talk about this, the better. So can you share with us what you've learned along the way? Because I think there'll be lots of people listening that will take away something from this that might help improve their business and their profitability and how they're running things, around how you come up with your pricing structure and perhaps where it started as well.
So when I first started out, I had no idea what I was doing. And I was basically basing my cake prices off of what I knew they were selling them for in the grocery store, because I didn't know better. I had never really been to a proper bakery before where you could order something custom. So I didn't realize what the price like discrepancy was between a grocery cake and like something that was custom made. So I was selling my 8-inch cakes for $30, basically making no money on them.
$30. So that's about £25, which is a few pounds more than a supermarket cake.
Yeah. So that's what I was doing. I thought that was correct. I thought this was a price that I know that people go to the grocery store to buy these cakes. So why wouldn't they buy mine? Because mine are cooler designs than the grocery store and whatever. So it took me a few months to finally figure it out. But there was one day where I was just like, maybe I should consider what I'm spending on ingredients and all that kind of thing. Because at the time I was doing my master's, I really didn't have any money at all. So I was just kind of gathering up whatever money from previous orders to spend for future orders. And I was like, why am I not really gaining that much money from doing this? So when I finally broke down how much it cost me to make a cake, maybe around $20 after all of like the supplies and everything are considered, I think I was making less than $2 an hour on these cakes. And especially as a beginner, you're going to take longer to make a cake than someone who's more experienced. So even worse for me. And I was like, I can't keep going like this. Like, this is a very expensive hobby to have. So I got to do something about it. I went through all my costs, calculated them properly, right down to like the teaspoon in all my recipes. I increased my prices. I think at first I kind of just moved up a little bit, maybe around the $60 to $70 range, which looking back was still way too cheap considering how much time I was putting into these cakes. And then it took me a while, but I slowly started increasing them. About every 3 to 4 months, I was like reevaluating what I was doing in the early days. Now I don't like adjust my prices as frequently as that, like not every 3 or 4 months. I'm not really reevaluating, but I think what really got me was the price of vanilla. I think it increased around the time that I started. It like doubled in price.
There was a shortage, right? On Madagascar vanilla. Yeah, I remember.
And I remember buying a jar of vanilla, and it was, I think the first time I bought it, it was like $14. And then when I ran out finally and I had to go buy another bottle, it was like $50. And I was like, well, I don't have $50. So it really took me some time. But I think what a lot of bakers get caught up on is no one's going to pay my prices. I'm going to lose customers that I've spent so much time building up. I think it's hard. It's hard to let that thought go, but it took me a while as well. You have to just consider that you building a strong client base of customers who appreciate and value your work is so much better than just gathering a ton of customers who are not willing to pay anything for all your work. And then getting referrals to other people for being the cheap cake person was not something that I wanted. Yeah, I had to make a change. So that's how I went about my thoughts process when I was pricing my cakes.
So did you lose people then initially?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep, I definitely lost people, but I gained new people. And I figured if I even just gain a couple of new customers who will support me with the prices that I put out, and they have a cake out at their party and they refer me to even just one of their friends, and then their friends come to me, then slowly but surely my business clientele base will grow back up to what it was.
But it could have been one of those moments, right? I guess you were backed into a corner. You weren't making any money. You needed to have money.
Yeah.
And so the only way to do that is to reevaluate your prices and go and have those scary conversations and have the knockbacks and be able to accept those knockbacks, because you also know, I need to earn money doing this. And so did that keep you strong throughout that? Because it's very difficult when a customer comes back and goes, your prices are way too expensive.
Yeah.
Why do I have to pay that? They feel like they're being shortchanged, or it's a very, very difficult, tricky conversation to have. So you have to have that inside knowledge that or self-belief in yourself that you're doing this for the right reasons, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I probably got a few inquiries like that where people either didn't respond to me when I sent the quote or they flat out just told me that's too expensive. And it took me a long time to kind of like build enough confidence in the cakes and the desserts that I was making to tell myself like my cakes are worth this much. And it's not that the person thinks I'm too expensive. It's more that what I'm doing doesn't fit their budget. So that kind of client is not right for me and what I'm offering. So it took me a while to kind of get to that point. But definitely at first I was terrified of getting those kind of messages telling me I was too expensive when I was barely breaking even. So I feel like a lot of it is your mindset. You just have to get into a place where you're okay with someone telling you you're too expensive or even just not responding after you send a quote.
And probably a confidence in your own ability, because by that stage, your cakes have probably gone on a whole journey and they are, like works of art. Whereas perhaps like when you were starting off, they were just cakes that you would give to friends and family, right?
Yeah.
This is all happening within a very short period of time because 2017, 2018, 2019, you opened Shop the Flower Girl. You're selling cakes, obviously. Your Instagram's starting to take off. You're shifting your pricing. You're losing customers. You're getting customers. But you had to build your confidence pretty quick. It's not like you've had a lot of years to do this and see where things go, even as a side project to what you do during the day. So I find that quite interesting that you've sort of pushed yourself. But this seems to be your personality. You can throw yourself into 10 things at once and manage it one way or another, or make yourself manage it one way or another. Because my next question to you is, through all this, all of a sudden you get this idea to open TFA, the Flower Girl Academy, and start teaching.
Yep.
So how did that come about? Like you had 10 hours of free time on a Wednesday? You're like, I'm going to fill that.
Oh my gosh. So when the pandemic started, I started teaching classes with another company and it was fun. I never taught a class before. I was terrified to teach my first one. I definitely had the imposter syndrome. Like, am I good enough to be teaching other people how to do this? But I had a lot of fun with it. And I think after about a year and a little bit of doing these classes with this other company, I stopped doing classes with them. And I thought, well, I can do this on my own. Like, why do I need someone to moderate my class? Why do I need someone to put together the class materials or put together the group or do the customer service and like get it up on my website? So I know there's like a lot of extra things to take on, but I feel like having it planned out, I think we spent about 4 months kind of planning it out before we actually went ahead and launched it. And then I always have the class set up and the materials ready to go. I don't take all of it on in like one weekend. I might like spread it out. So for example, my next class, I'm actually stressing about the next class. My next class is a photography class and I have not written out the materials yet. It's coming up soon, like in 2 weeks. But I will probably spend the evenings of this next week that we have ahead of us just putting together all the class materials for the class. So I kind of just have everything planned in advance and then I just take my time getting the materials together before the class happens. So I try not to burden myself by kind of just spreading out the tasks instead of just trying to clump them all into single days because then I can't handle it.
So this is a photography class on shooting your bakes. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So it's not just baking that you're teaching. There's other elements like the social media aspect. Effectively, this is marketing, this is branding, this is your image that you're putting online. So I see the value of it. Of course, I think it's great that you're doing that.
Thank you.
Was this people asking for this, or did you just think this was the next natural thing to include?
At the beginning of the year or like late last year, I was designing like what classes I wanted to offer for 2022. And the way that I looked at it was, what do people frequently ask me for help with? And photography is up there. I'm always getting asked how I take my photos, how I set up my backdrops, or how do I set a scene if I'm like styling a post for smaller desserts, or what camera am I using, or what settings, or how to edit a photo. So I thought like this is like something that I've been teaching myself for the past 5 years. I can probably share this all together in one course that could help someone who is just starting out. Maybe they just, for fun, want to post nice pictures of what they're baking, or maybe they run a business and they're having a hard time really showing their desserts like in their best light, and they want to just improve their business. Whatever reason it is for people, I felt like this could be something that could really help people. So I thought it would be a good class topic. Yeah.
Incredible, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Let's keep this going. I mean, like, there's so many more things you could potentially be doing with your brand. And like, what other ideas do you want to share? You think you can see your brand doing in a few more years? Because you do not seem to sit still. Like, you just add layer upon layer upon layer to your business. If you told me, nah, this is good, I'm done now, I don't need to do any more, I would say that's total nonsense. Because I know your brain is probably ticking away on what you want to do next.
Yeah. Yeah, we always have some new ideas. Sometimes we're not able to get them done in like a timeline that we intend. Like sometimes it takes us longer since we're just two people working on this. Was it just yesterday we were talking about starting a blog on our website, kind of like an advice blog, a baking tips and advice, so that when people see my videos on Instagram, I can refer them to my blog where they get like a full explanation of whatever it is that I talked about in my videos that they see on Instagram. So I thought it would be a better way to kind of keep everything in one place. If someone needed help, they could like easily search it up or something like that. Another idea that I've been wanting to do this for years is to make a cookbook.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. When's it coming? Not just a cookbook, but everything in it.
Yeah, I really want to make a cake cookbook. So all like different cake recipes, fillings that you can put in the cakes, and then like buttercream. And I think a lot of people don't know about, there's a type of buttercream called flour buttercream or ermine buttercream. And that's something that I experimented with early on when I started baking. It's a less sweet type of buttercream and a little bit difficult to make, but I was making all of my cakes with flour buttercream when I started out, and people would always come to me and ask like how to make it or what's the recipe. And I was like, I'm holding off for this cookbook. I'm going to make a cookbook one day. And the reason I even experimented with flour buttercream at all was because my dad is my official taste tester, and he would complain to no end about how sweet the American buttercream was. That's the buttercream I started learning with. So I was determined to find something that he would like to eat. And then I feel like it's not something that a lot of bakers use. I think a lot of bakers turn to Swiss meringue buttercream or something like that, or American buttercream. And so people would always come to me, ask for flour buttercream help. So I want to go through flour buttercream in this cookbook. And yeah, I just want to make a cookbook where you can kind of mix and match cake flavors with different filling flavors and different buttercream flavors. And I'm really excited. I always planned to do something like this, but I always said I would do it once I'm graduated from all my schooling. So I guess now's the time to start working on it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You have to. Yeah, I mean, now is the time. You can't let these things go past.
Yeah.
Lindsay, if we sat around, Rachel and I, and just took that lackadaisical approach, we would never have created OLBAA. We would never have created our packaging business. You just have to take the plunge with this stuff and see where it goes. You could argue that this podcast was an idea that we thought, well, we'd love to do it, but you have to follow through. I mean, this is what we do. But you've got that drive, you've got that determination.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Because it seems like it's consistent, right? Throughout your education, your schooling, and then you set yourself more challenges. So something's driving you to do that.
Yeah.
What's the story?
If I could describe myself, I would describe myself as like extremely self-motivated. I feel like I don't need someone to come along and be like, why aren't you doing this? Or you need to do more of this or that. And like, I can just take it upon myself to make sure things are done. But I also think like I have to give credit to my parents as well. I feel like even from like a very young age, like kindergarten level, they kind of like instill these values in us that if you work hard in your life, you will be successful, or you can get what you want out of life if you work hard. And I feel like that's stuck with me like my entire life. We would come home from school, even as like very young kids, and the first thing they would say is, you guys are going to sit at the table and do the homework until it's done, and then you can go and play. So I feel like there was only one option, and that was like to get the work done and like work hard, play hard, basically. So if you do the work, you can go and play after. And I just kind of carried that even like through my like university years, that kind of like thought process, or like that kind of mentality that if I work hard, I will come out on the other side with a life that I enjoy living. So I feel like that's where I kind of get my motivation from to do things. It's just kind of something that they taught me so young, and I just carried that with me until my like adult years.
What's the downsides of that, Lindsay? Like to have that constant need to constantly be thinking about new plans, new projects, to maximizing every hour of your day. How does that manifest in itself, and what tips have you learned to help manage that too?
I feel like the amount of stuff that I take on can definitely be anxiety inducing, even though the baking was initially to reduce my anxiety. It can also bring on anxiety as well with like the amount of stuff that I put on my plate. So I think it's really, really important to schedule in for me like some kind of downtime. I try like during the week. Lately, it's been hard because we are renovating our new house. But before we started with the renovations, I was going to the gym pretty regularly. I find that's like a good me time where I can just kind of clear my mind and decompress. But sometimes I like physically have to go into my planner and schedule in a date where I'm not doing anything. I'm not working. I'm not doing anything for the business. I'm not doing schoolwork. I'm not doing anything for my actual job. I just have to like schedule something for me. And I'm hoping to do one soon because it's been a really long time. But I think it's really important because if you constantly are grinding out on your to-do list, like your to-do lists are taking up your entire day, it's really unhealthy, like mentally, and it's physically draining. And I find that it leads to burnout. Actually, after this podcast, I'm doing a session on burnout on my Instagram page, going live, and we're going to talk about burnout. But yeah, I think I've burned out too many times along the way that I feel like now I can like recognize the signs, and now I realize I have to schedule myself downtime or I'm not able to function at my very best.
It's very important. That's very good.
Yeah.
I mean, these are things that a lot of people learn after they've sort of hit that bad part, and they go, okay, or someone tells them, maybe you should schedule a bit more time for yourself or something. You know, obviously you've got your fiance to help you, but are you working with anyone else to help you, whether it's through a personal coach or a business coach or something like that that's helping you develop this? Or are you sort of learning as you go along and making mistakes and then learning from the mistakes?
Mostly learning from the mistakes. I don't have anyone else outside of both of us working on this. Sometimes my mom jumps in if she sees that we're struggling. Say we launch a bunch of new products. We have like sometimes hundreds of orders to pack, and she will jump in and help us pack these orders and do these order fulfillments. Or sometimes if it's a holiday, I like to do like treat box pre-orders with my local customers, and my mom knows what kind of mess I make in her kitchen when I do these things. So she will be the first one to jump in and help me with the dishes, or even just simple tasks that I've taught her to do along the way. But outside of that, it's just us two, really.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's such a good story. I honestly, it's very inspiring because there's a certain sense of naivety to how you approach this. right? You come up with an idea, you want to do it, you go do it. Maybe it doesn't go to plan the first time or the second time, but you persevere and you continue through it and you find a way, right?
Yeah.
And you make it happen because you have that ethos to say, well, work hard, get the job done. And if you fail gracefully, but you pick yourself up from that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's such a good story for, and we're out of time, unfortunately, to talk about a lot of the things, but we can keep doing about this because I'm sure you've got a whole book on just any other things that you wanted to add to your ability in a day. But listen, what we love to do at the end of every podcast is just hit you with a few quick fire questions.
All right.
You can just tell us, the first thing that comes to mind. And I'm going to go first. And the first question, I'm going to have to change just a little bit to accommodate what you told us earlier. Because normally I just ask American buttercream or Swiss meringue buttercream, but I have to add now flour buttercream to this option. What's your preference of those three?
Oh, flour buttercream, definitely.
Flour buttercream. I look forward to reading the book so I can understand more about this when it comes out.
Yeah.
Okay, so one aspect of baking you won't compromise on.
So I think, and I've said this since I started, the taste and the outside appearance have to match each other. It can't look pretty and taste bad, and it can't taste amazing and look terrible. So they have to both be up to standard, the taste and the appearance.
I like that one.
And I do not compromise on it.
Got it. Yeah, that's brilliant. A baking book from your bookshelf.
So I think my most recent one is I can't remember the actual title, but it's by Jenna Ray Cakes. I think I want to dive into that book a little more. There looks like there's a lot of yummy stuff in there that I haven't gotten a chance to try.
Fantastic.
And who would you want to make your next birthday cake?
Oh my gosh. I would say, that's a tough one. Maybe Leslie Vigil. I don't know if you guys know her on Instagram. She makes insanely beautiful buttercream florals. I would love a cake from her.
Is she Canadian?
She's in the States.
And she's in the States. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. We're going to check that out. All right. We'll throw one last one in here because you've got quite an interesting journey with your baking. And that is,
okay,
what would you tell yourself if you were starting out back in 2016 in terms of one piece of advice as you go down this path?
That's a tough one. I guess I could relate it back to the whole thing of burnout, because I burned out so many times along the way of doing all this. I wish that I had given myself more time for myself, but also including my family and my fiance into that, because I feel like they're all very much supportive and involved in what I do. I wish I would have foreseen myself burning out. I was just probably so excited to get started on all this that I couldn't help myself. But looking back, I definitely wish I took more time for myself.
That's brilliant.
So for everyone listening, Lindsay will be sharing on her page some tips on handling burnout. So when this podcast episode is released, I'm sure you can go back and find all that information on Lindsay's page.
Yeah.
Because I think it's such an important topic to talk about and share about. And thank you so much, Lindsay, for your honesty and being willing to share quite vulnerably a lot of the journey that you've had with baking and are on right now.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for having me on your podcast. I feel so honored to be here.
Oh, it's brilliant. So cool. We've really enjoyed it, Lindsay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Lindsay.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, Rachel, I have to say, getting off that call with Lindsay, I can only wish I was that productive at that age, considering how many things she's juggling, and yet she's still able to build and grow this business, her brand, and keep adding to it too. So it's not like she's just doing bakes and selling them. She's taking on the shop. She's doing the classes. Now she's talking about writing a book. I mean, this is amazing drive and determination at such a young age.
It's very inspiring.
Yeah, and also she still has that caring and aspect of her personality and wanting to do this for the greater good and help someone out and sharing those tips back with her audiences. I think that says a lot about her and her personality too.
I agree. I totally agree with you. I think that her personality is very kind and sincere in that regard, and she really wants other people to succeed as a result of learning from her. I mean, that's part of the ethos behind her products too, because she, was trying to source and work with things that work really well for her and would work really well for other bakers. So I'm really impressed with that approach, and I feel like she's just doing an amazing work. So, Lindsay, thank you so much for joining. That was really informative, and hope all of you joined that. We'll catch you all again very soon.
And that wraps up episode 6 of My Baking Journey. Do check out the show notes to learn everything you need to know about Lindsay and where to follow her online. We really hope you enjoyed the show, and we really hope you're enjoying the series. So please do rate us and subscribe if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, or follow us if you listen to us on Spotify. We are back next week, and we just want to remind you that this podcast is brought to you by OLBAA, packaging for bakers designed by a baker. Check us out at www.olbaa.shop. See you next week.